la domanda con cui poi invito la nostra ospite qui è che cosa dobbiamo e che cosa possiamo fare anche dal punto di vista della formazione delle nostre persone, perché tutto quello che abbiamo raccontato questa sera passa dal cambiamento di come formiamo le nostre persone, i nostri manager, di come reimmaginiamo il modo di lavorare. E allora, anziché, come dire, domandarlo solo a noi stessi, abbiamo pensato che ci potesse essere una grande keynote speaker internazionale che ce lo raccontasse questa sera. È Future Work Advisor, keynote speaker, autrice di libri, Chief Learning e Talent Officer di The Grid. Ho il piacere di invitare qui questa sera Kelly Palmer. Kelly, thank you very much for being with us tonight, and I leave the stage to you, and I look forward to listen to all the things that you want to share with us. Yes, I'm giving it to you. Okay, let's check the microphone. Ok.
Ok, un grande piacere essere qui stasera. Sto imparando l'italiano, so non parlo in italiano stasera, ma forse la prossima volta. I'll speak in English tonight.
Avevo detto a Kelly, beh, insomma, sei spesso in Italia, puoi parlare in italiano, e lei mi ha gentilmente risposto, I'll do it in English.
Next
Kelly
time.
Palmer.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great to be here tonight. So I know I have a lot of slides and probably not a lot of time, so I'm going to try to get through this quickly. But just to give you some background on myself, I am the Chief Learning and Talent Officer at Degreed. And if you want to know more about Degreed, you can talk to my colleague, Giancarlo, anytime after this. Before joining Degreed, I was actually the Chief Learning Officer at LinkedIn, and I was recruited to start the learning organization from the ground up. It was my great pleasure, and that's a whole other story. I also am an advisor for a venture fund that invests in future of work companies, human-centered future of work companies. And so one of the things that I'm doing with them is talking about models for the future of work and future of work strategies. So we'll talk about that a bit today as well. One thing that is not on my slide today is that my first job out of college was actually at Olivetti. And so I was trying to listen very intently to what was being talked about today, but it was at their Advanced Technology Center in Silicon Valley, kind of before Silicon Valley was even a thing. So it's a pleasure to be here and to hear you. With that as the background, one of the other things, so I wrote the book, co-authored the book, The Expertise Economy, that talks about the urgent need to upskill the workforce. And that's where we're going to start today, because we are partnering, Degreed is partnering with the World Economic Forum along with a lot of other top companies. And the challenge here is around upskilling the workforce. And so we have to upskill 1 billion people by 2030. And it's no small feat. And this isn't something that's happening just in the US. This is all over the world. It's here, it's in Latin America, it's around the world. So how do we deal with that? Well, a lot of companies are actually investing quite heavily in upskilling the workforce. The first company that announced that they were doing this was Amazon, and they said that they would invest $700 million in upskilling the workforce. And the latest company, or probably the company I know that has invested the most, PwC, $3 billion in upskilling the workforce. Why? Because we're spending all this money because it's so critically important with the way things are changing and how fast things are moving. We all need skills for the future. So given that, I do want to talk about, well, what exactly is upskilling? And this is both from an individual perspective and a company perspective. You know, if we invest in employees' continuous learning, it can be a huge benefit. And what we need to do is we need to identify skill gaps, fill those skill gaps. And what it does for employees is it helps keep us employable, and it helps companies stay competitive, because this is really one of the value propositions of the future is, are you going to invest in employees? Are you going to invest in people so they'll want to stay at your company? So the vision of this, and that what we talk about in the book, The Expertise Economy, is this idea that skills are the currency of the future of work. And if you imagine a GPS for your career, where people talk about what skills you have rather than where you went to school, what degree you have, or what company you work for, think of all the possibilities and the opportunities. So this is one of the things we're also working with on the World Economic Forum, a universal skills passport and a common skills taxonomy. So there's a lot of work going on with that. So, we've been working on changing the way people think about learning in the corporate environment for some time now, but COVID just accelerated everything that was happening in work. And so every company is going through some sort of digital transformation. Remote work made us realize there are new and different ways that we can be learning and working. People are learning new skills more than ever now. And then, of course, as the topic is tonight, there's a huge emphasis on employee well-being. And of course, I couldn't tell whether this was actually being talked about tonight or not, but the Great Resignation is happening all across the world. And what's interesting about the Great Resignation is it's not happening in just one sector. It's happening in all sectors and all age groups. And I think that that's really important to note. And if this is just from yesterday or this week, April 30th, that it's actually, especially for older more tenured people, this is actually accelerating. It's not over. And what that means is, people are still continue to quit their jobs to rethink what work means to them and where they want to be in their lives. And so I think we have to keep our eye on how that's evolving. This is the thing about a future of work strategy. It's always changing, because every week we get more data about what's happening. So the result of the pandemic and the Great Resignation is that there's fundamentally new worker expectations right now. We know a lot of employees are feeling burned out, hence why we need more wellness. In the U.S., people are willing to take less compensation if they can have more flexibility in their jobs. We've seen that. I've seen that firsthand. A lot of employees want to learn skills, but not just skills after work or on their own time. They want to learn it as part of their job. And then ultimately, and I did hear somebody talk about this earlier, people want control over how and when they work. They want flexibility. And so with that, and I'll just mention that, studies have been done where it's actually so much more cost effective to upskill and reskill the employees you already have rather than trying to hire that talent. It's just too expensive, and there's not enough people with the skills that we actually need. So what does this all mean? It all means that we really, really have to reimagine human work. Some companies are doing better at this than others. Even now, with people going back to the office, there's a lot of companies that are saying, let's go back to the old way. And a lot of companies are saying, no, we have an opportunity to move forward. And of course, technology is making new things possible. So we have to think about how technology can help us, but also how do we make sure that technology promotes meaningful connections and powerful learning opportunities, and not just as a tool, as something for good, not something that's going to make things worse. So the future of work strategy, I believe, has three components. I think these are the three components that we all need to be thinking about moving forward. The first one is a learning strategy. We'll talk about that, learning and upskilling. The second, well-being, has to be part of that. And then the third, I think, just flexibility. You have to figure out how to build flexibility into your strategy given how things are changing. So let's dive into the first one, learning. So I really believe that learning can be your super skill. You know, if we think about continuous learning and the fact that we can't rely on our formal education to take us through the entirety of our careers any longer, we have to be continuously learning. The other thing is that people want experiences to learn and grow in their careers. And if you've ever heard of this S curve, it talks about the fact that people start off on a job kind of unsure of themselves and their skills and their capabilities. They start getting better at their job and then they start feeling confident and competent, but they're still challenged. The problem comes when you get to the top of the S curve, and that's when people reach mastery and they're also a little unchallenged. They need new things, new challenges. So that's where we can help. We can help give people challenges as they learn new skills. Don't just let them learn new skills, put those to work. So clearly there's a lot of new ways of learning. A lot of you are hearing learning in the flow of work. Let's make work and learning the same thing. Let's use more technology. We've seen that happen throughout this time. And the one that I love the most is the peer-to-peer learning. And I think it can be incredibly powerful. How many of you are using peer-to-peer learning at your companies right now? Yeah, a few of you. I mean, it can be really, really powerful. And there's a whole chapter in the book that we talk about that. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, so then there are also learning experience platforms. So for those of you who don't know about Degreed, Degreed is a learning experience platform. And really, the whole idea with that is to say, how can we tie learning to building skills and then helping people get opportunities once they have those skills? Curated content, data and analytics about how people are learning, what they're learning, what skills they're building. It's really changing the way we can think about learning for the future. So during the pandemic, what we found was when people were stuck at home and and all of a sudden, remote work was something that everyone had to do. People took time to focus on learning, and what we found was online learning just spiked incredibly. So we had a 64% increase in weekday online learning, and then a 500% increase both in professional certificates for tech skills, but also weekend learning for people who were wanting to understand about topics around well-being. So we saw Coursera's The Science of Well-Being, the #1 course during the pandemic, and just people really taking time out to figure out how can I deal with all the things that are going on in life around the pandemic and having to work from home. So I often get asked, okay, so we're talking about skills, upskilling the workforce. What are the skills that are most important for the future of work? So if you look at this list, I have these in 2 categories, and I've actually first put the category of power skills. You might say, well, what's that? And so it's soft skills basically, but I hate the term soft skills. I think it's not powerful enough for how important these skills are to the future of work. And these are uniquely human skills, things like creativity, emotional intelligence, empathy is on there. You'll see collaboration. Now, that's not to say that the technical skills aren't also very important. We know that they are, but the future is going to be about more about human skills that stay with you and are transferable when you talk about, a GPS for your career, whereas the technical skills, really, there's a half-life for those. And the other thing I wanted to show you is just how data can really help you understand what's going on for yourself and for your organization. So I pulled this data shortly after the pandemic to say, okay, across the millions of users we have on Degreed, what skills are people focusing on during that time? So we can see the top 3: crisis management, resilience, mental health, and down there at number 9, empathy. This is a point in time. So if I were to pull this data today, it would most likely look different, but this can give you an idea of how you can use data to think about how are people feeling at your company, but also what are they learning and what skills are they building. So your super skill, I always say it's learning agility. So what is learning agility? The curiosity and the motivation to continuously learn throughout the entirety of your career. And if you wonder if somebody has learning agility, ask them, what did you learn last week, last month, last year? And we're learning in a variety of ways. It doesn't mean that you're going to sit in a classroom or even take a virtual online class. We're learning from books and podcasts and videos and all kinds of things. So realize that as we move forward. Okay, the second part of the future of work strategy is well-being, and it's really non-negotiable at this point. We have to be thinking about well-being as part of our strategy. So also during the pandemic, what we had data that showed the personal impact of balancing work and home in one place. And we know that people were looking for courses online around stress management, leading through crisis. And so it was, a pretty big thing. Women left the workforce in record numbers. And at least in the US, they have not come back yet. And so we're still, all the gains that we made about women in the workforce, we lost some of those, and we're trying to get it back. For some, the working at home works great for them. Others, it's just they've said it's enough. It's not worth it to go back to work. So I do several CHRO, or Chief Human Resource roundtables with Gartner. And, what we found was we were asking CHROs, what were the skills that you were most looking for in leaders during this time? And they were saying they wanted leaders with empathy, resilience, flexibility, and communication. And so those were some of the findings that we had moving forward. Okay, and so, wellness and mental health, they're really important topics. And I think technology can play a huge role in this. And we've got a quote here. I mean, the question is no longer whether technology will transform mental health. It's like, but when and how it will occur. So our company, Degreed, actually gave all employees the Calm app as one of the things that we wanted to do. It was only one of many things. We really didn't have a well-being strategy at Degreed, but we started to think about that. Interestingly enough, at LinkedIn, we did have a well-being strategy. We had a whole wellness group, and kind of a little bit before our time in that sense. And so got to understand how that might work at a corporate level. But also, as I'm advising the future of work companies, what we're seeing is investments more in, virtual reality, and how that may be able to help people with mental health and the future of work, along with personalized telemedicine. I know a lot more people are using it now than ever before, probably here as well, I'm imagining. I put this in here, but Americans actually in general could do better with taking time off. I pulled this from a LinkedIn post that came out recently, but I love the European lifestyle. I'm actually spending half of my time here now rather than in America, but it's true. It's like we don't take time out for just, it's like almost like you feel guilty if you take, a few hours off here and there. So I'm hoping that we take some of, the things that you all here have known for a long time back to America. So the last part of the future of work strategy is around flexibility. And the thing I like most about this, I remember when there was a lot of controversy about whether companies were going to have policies about making people return to work. Microsoft said at the time, our strategy is we are going to try to be as flexible as possible. And when I talk about this environment changing so much, we see almost every day companies changing their minds about what they're going to do. Are they going to force people to come back to work? Are they going to adopt a hybrid workforce? And Airbnb announced yesterday they had a date for when they were going to make people come back to the office, and it was September 2022. And yesterday they announced they're not going to do that. And in fact, they're going to let everybody work remote and from wherever they want. So it's like it's gone pretty drastically the other way. It makes sense for Airbnb given their business. But the point around the flexibility is it's around motivation. I mean, if our value proposition for employees is to say, we want you to come and work for our company and you have a choice about where you work, we have to think about what motivates humans fundamentally. And so Dan Pink wrote this fantastic book called Drive. I don't know if any of you have read it, but he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And these are the things, we want to be able to choose how we learn, how we work, when we work. We fundamentally want to get better at what we do, and ultimately we want to have purpose. I heard purpose was talked about a lot tonight, and do work that has meaning, have a life that has meaning. So those are the things we need to think about. So the latest data says, in terms of flexibility, so 78% of employees that were surveyed want location flexibility, but 95% want schedule flexibility. It's even more important than where they work. They want to have control over when they work. So I think that that's interesting. 68% want hybrid work arrangements. Some will never go back to the office. We know that there's a few companies that have announced that they're going to let people work from home forever. I'm not going back to an office. I have actually been working remotely for 6 years now, so it's not new for me. But some people do want to go back into the office. Maybe they don't have a good work arrangement at home where it's conducive to working, or maybe they like the social aspect. So I think this idea of flexibility is that, just like learning, one size doesn't fit all, and we need the flexibility is around how do we help accommodate people in various ways. So I heard smart working being talked about a lot tonight. I actually love the word. We call it remote working in the US, but I love smart working. I just think it's so great, and I hope we adopt it. And so a lot of towns are actually encouraging digital nomads and smart working, trying to get people to come and work. And I have my hand up, for that. So obviously there's a lot of positives in remote work. And I think one of the biggest, people are saying, look, I can get up, I can have my coffee, I can start work right away. I'm more productive. All the data shows that people are more productive. And of course, you don't have to sit in that terrible commute, which is for a lot of people just so terrible. And then you can kind of control when you are learning and make learning part of work, which is, I think, the ultimate of what we want. The last thing, I don't have a timer on this, so I hope I'm doing okay on time. Yep. Okay, good. So the other thing I wanted to do is bust a few of the remote work myths, because we've got a lot of people in traditional command and control companies who are saying, no, we can't have our whole company work remote because, one, we can't collaborate, we're not very productive, innovation's going to suffer, and our company culture will disappear. But in all of these cases, the data shows us that that's really not true. And the company culture thing is a little tougher. I have to say that, you have to be very intentional about your company culture. But, as John Carlo and I can attest to, Degreed is a remote first company. And we just had our company annual meeting in Miami last week. And it was great. It was great to get our whole company together and to collaborate but it doesn't mean that we all need to be in the same office every day to be working. And there's a lot of great ways that we can collaborate virtually, and we know we can be very productive. So I think that ultimately, that when you think about what your value proposition is, you want to think about how you want, people do, and people have a choice of where they work today, and they will pick. I always tell new college grads, if you have a choice, pick companies that will invest in your learning, pick a company that is forward thinking and focuses on well-being and is as flexible as possible. And I think that that's a winning combination. This is the way of the future. It may take us a while to get there. There may be companies that are more reluctant than others, but this is basically the strategy. So reimagine what work can be. 1, focus on learning and skills for the future. 2, focus on well-being as part of the strategy, not as an afterthought, and then push your company to be as flexible as possible. So again, thank you so much for having me be here today. I appreciate it very much.
Kelly Palmer, thank you very much for envisioning us on the future of work and for explaining us how much well-being is important in the future of work. Grazie a Kelly Palmer per averci dato questa visione del futuro del lavoro e per averci fatto capire quanto il well-being sia al centro del futuro del lavoro.